quiz question for you. What is the purpose of a test? Come on, shout it out there. Everybody's whispering.
To see what you know.
To see what you know, that's exactly what I read in my notes. You read my notes this morning. Okay? That's one purpose of a test. Also, a purpose of a test could be to see how strong something is. Like if you're building a bridge, you might want to test it before you drive an 80,000-pound semi-truck across it, right? Okay, you want to see how strong it is. Okay? Testing is also, it can be considered preparing something for its designed use. Okay, and I'll get more into that in a little bit. Okay? So it's that thing, preparing something for its designed use. That's kind of what Peter is going to be speaking of in today's passage. So I want you to go to 1 Peter chapter 1. And we're going to look at verses 5 through 9 today. Now we already did verses 3 through 5 yesterday, last Sunday, sorry. So we're going to be doing a little review by going back into verse 5. So I'll give you a second there while I sip my water. Oh yeah, I got an object lesson today too. I got to get that out. There we go. Put that here. Where's heavy? Okay. All right, 1 Peter 1, 5 through 9. The first word in 5 is who? Who? You, right? Believers in Jesus Christ. Who are kept by the power of God through faith for salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time. In this you greatly rejoice. In the salvation he's talking about, right? In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ, whom having not seen, you love. Though now you do not see him, yet believing, you rejoice with joy inexpressible and full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, the salvation of your souls. Okay, there's a whole lot to unpack in this little bit right there, all right? First thing, we need to do a little defining in here. The word salvation appears here a couple of times, and biblically, salvation has 3 related meanings. I'm just going to go through them with you, okay? We consider salvation as the admission of faith in Jesus Christ. When somebody says, I've been saved, right? That's what they're talking about. Is that admission of faith, right? That public proclamation that you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, that he was born, that he died for you, and that he rose again from the dead. That's meaning number 1. Meaning number 2 is the ongoing transformation by the renewing of your mind. If you go to Romans 12, chapter 2, later on, you'll see that very verbiage appear from Paul. So that's also considered salvation. In other words, as the Holy Spirit works in you and changes your life, takes away your addictions, your anger, your frustrations, all those things that trip us up, right? Changes our character. That's the ongoing transformation by the renewing of your mind is part of salvation. So it isn't like, well, you're saved once and then that's it, and then you just go about your merry way. That's a term that some of us call cheap grace. We're saying, well, I said the sinner's prayer and I got baptized, so I'm good. I can do whatever I want. That was kind of Bill Clinton's point of view back in the day. Okay? And I'll just leave it at that. So that's meaning number 2. And then meaning number 3 means the rapture and second coming of Christ. The removal of believers from the earth, and then the resurrection of dead believers. Okay? That's like the end of salvation. That's the culmination of it. So all three are all related, okay? Because if you truly have faith in Jesus Christ, you're going to allow the Spirit of God to transform your mind. Change how you think and how you look at the world, okay? And then, at the end, whether it's the end of your life or if it's the end of world history, as we want to call it, the culmination being in heaven with Jesus. Three terms for salvation, okay? All three meanings are interwoven in the book of 1 Peter. So just keep that in mind as we go through Peter. Salvation is a key factor here, a key word. Now, Peter is saying here is our salvation must be proof tested. So we know how strong our own faith is. He uses gold as an example, but I don't have enough gold to do an object lesson. The only gold I have is my wedding band, and I'm not going to melt it down for you. Okay, I can barely get the thing off, and I had it resized a few months ago. Okay, like I have to, put lotion or soap on it or something to get it off. But how was gold refined? I don't know how to do it now. In the old days, how was gold refined? Well, because if you were here for the gold rush and in the John Day area back in the late 1800s, you didn't get pure gold out of the ground or out of the river. It had stuff in it, rocks and sand and other impurities. And how would you get the gold if you struck a gold vein in a gold mine? How would you get it out of there once you busted it out of the hole in the ground? You melt it, right? You melt it, and then the impurities rise to the top, and you skim it off. I think they called that stuff dross, right? Okay, so that's how you purify the gold with fire, with heat. Okay, and Peter's using that as a word picture. And I'm going to paint a different word picture for you today, because I've used a term called proof testing. All right. So I have in my hand here a steel tube. It has a hole in it down the center. Got another little hole right there. You don't even know. That's not a big deal. Just a steel tube. Anybody know what this is? It's a rifle barrel. It's just a barrel. So it won't do anything because it doesn't have the rest of the rifle attached to it, right? It's just a tube with a hole in it. I mean, I could point it at you and it shouldn't be a big deal, but I won't, okay? But I mean, I could look down at it and go, yeah, there's a hole there. It's got some little spirally stuff in it. But it's just a steel tube, okay? Now, when this thing is actually used as a rifle barrel, you have to make sure that you're using something of quality. You don't want to use, cheap Chinese-made rifle barrels that you might find on Amazon if you could find such a thing. I wouldn't trust them, okay? Because they need to be proof tested. The operating pressure of what goes inside that area right there is called the chamber. The operating pressure of this particular caliber is approximately 50,000 pounds per square inch. That's a lot of pressure. And this needs to be able to stand thousands and thousands of rounds fired through it at that pressure. Okay? So what they'll do is, as these are manufactured, is they'll pull a few off the line and they will proof test them with an over-pressurized load. Like maybe 80,000 psi to see what it does. Okay? Because it should be unaffected by the designed operating pressure. And the proof test should show that it's strong enough to handle that which it's designed for, right? So it's made to be stronger than it needs to be if it's built correctly. Okay, that's proof testing. That's a sample of proof testing. Okay? And no, you can't have it because it's brand new and I might want it someday. All right. So that's what proof testing is. And what Peter's saying here is I think it's interesting. He says, if need be, right? In verse 6, in this you greatly rejoice, so you rejoice in your salvation, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials. In other words, if need be, you have been proof tested. If need be, you have been purified. Because you see, the hard things that we go through, those are the things that really test us. Those are the things that can really purify us and cause us to maybe remove some of those things from our life that we just don't need anymore. and get down to the basics. Kind of like purifying gold, removing the stuff you don't need to get down to the element that is most important. So this type of proof testing is about introspection. That's a funny word, isn't it? I almost made that one up, but it is a real word. All right? Introspection meaning self-examination. See, we can't look at another person and look at what they're going through and say, oh, see, they're being proof tested. They're being purified. I can't look at, members of our congregation here and say, well, see, this is why they're going through this, because obviously there's things in their life that maybe they need to get rid of. That's not what this is meant. This is meant for me. I need purification. I need proof testing. You need to look at yourself and look at the circumstances that sometimes you're in and ask yourself, am I being purified here? Am I being proof tested? Right? I call it the spiritual mirror. And it's the tough things, right? It's the tough things that then prepare us for whatever it is that's coming next. So when this rifle barrel is manufactured, one of the ways barrels are manufactured is through a process called hammer forging. So what does a forge do? Well, it heats something up, but then what do you do with it once you heat it up? Yeah, I did that in high school in metal shop. That was one of the few things I was okay at. Terrible at welding, but I could work the forge. And I made myself chisels and, things like that, right? So you take a piece of soft steel, you heat it up, and you get it red hot, and then you beat the snot out of it with a hammer. And what does that do? It changes the molecular structure. It moves the molecules of steel around and rearranges them so that they're stronger, right? That's really what it does. That's how swords are made. It used to be a great Marine Corps recruiting ad where, the sword maker is pounding has got the sword in the forge, in the hot coals, the flame is on it, and then he takes it out and puts it on the anvil and just pounds it, right? Representing the training of, a young, long-haired civilian into a hardened Marine. It's a great ad, right? Well, we can then apply that to ourselves as Christians too. We go from being soft, right, to all of a sudden something difficult, something hard happens to us, right? And instead of that making us weaker, spiritually, it should be making us stronger. There's an old phrase, old military phrase, that which does not kill you makes you stronger. I don't know. I always thought that which does not kill me hurts really bad. Right? That's how I used to look at it. Never said that out loud to a drill sergeant, but whatever. Okay? So it's these tough things, right? And we've got a lot of people here going through tough things, and sometimes we don't know why. So it's not for us to judge each other as to why a person, is going through this. Like some people will say, well, all that bad stuff has happened to them. Boy, they must have done something real terrible in their young life. And, God's getting his revenge on them. No, not. What's happening is the things in our life that maybe we don't need are being separated from us. And perhaps maybe, at least spiritually, we need to be strengthened, okay? And we don't get strengthened, by eating sugar-coated cereal, right? We get strengthened by hard work. So you see, we are often tested by difficulties. And life is full of this testing. It could be health. You could be tested socially. You could be tested up to and including direct persecution. You could be tested by martyrdom. There's the ultimate test, right? You could die for your faith. It happens around somewhere in the world, maybe even in our own country, every day. People are tested, sometimes to the ultimate test. And it's these tests that can help us prioritize what is truly important. See, I have my own plans, right? I've had my own plans of what I want to do. Some of you heard this story, some of you have not, part of our personal testimony. Is near the end of my law enforcement career, I was pretty tired, I was pretty burned out. I was ready for a change. So my plan was to buy some property way up in the woods in North Idaho, away from people. And retire as early as possible and become a hermit with my wife. And only come to town when I needed something like groceries. And then leave, right? That was my plan. And God had other plans. God said, no, you're actually going the other direction from Spokane. You're going to go southwest instead of northeast. And you're going to be a pastor. And I'm like, I don't want to. Right? But it was those trials and that testing of all those years, right, leading up to that helped prepare me for this. I just didn't realize it at the time. So this testing can help us determine sometimes God's will for our lives. We don't know if we should go to, place A or place B. And sometimes there's these trials and tests that come along and say, no, you're staying at A or you're going to B. Even though maybe our plan was to be in the opposite place. That's what happened to at least to me and Galen as well. It's kind of like, when Elijah killed all the prophets of Baal, right? And had the great spiritual victory, and then he got threatened by Jezebel. So what did he do? He ran away, right? He ran a long ways away. And then when God finally came and spoke to him, he says, I want you to go back, and I want you to go right past where you were, and go as far the other way as you came the first time. And go find your replacement. Right? So sometimes this trial testing is determined what's our will. What are we supposed to do with our time? I can't tell you that for you personally. Again, this is a self-examination process, an introspection passage. Instructions to look at our lives. So what are we to do with our time? It could be about what are we to do with our finances, if we have any. Where do we spend our money? How do we spend our money? Again, I cannot tell you how to do that. I cannot tell you how much to put in the offering box. That's between you and God. These trials and these testings can be have to do sometimes with our conversations. Who do we talk to? Who do we visit with? Who do we socialize with? Who do we say hello to? Who do we introduce ourselves to? Many of us have experienced these various things, or are experiencing them, or will at some point. If you live long enough, you will have some tough times in your life. That I can guarantee you. Right? It used to be said, there's only two guarantees in this life, death and taxes. Well, there's also going to be tough times in your life. You're going to experience loss. You're going to experience rejection. A good chance, of course, most of you are old enough to not have to actually work a regular job anymore, but if you've worked long enough, you've probably been fired or laid off. Right? Been there. Fired a long time ago. Been there, done that. So what this proof testing can do, in other words, what the seemingly overpressure in our hearts, right? That overpressure in our lives, what it can do for you, it's not a negative thing. What it can do for us is to prepare us for action. Again, you would not drive across a bridge, at least hopefully wouldn't, that hadn't been tested before you drove across it. Would you? Well, you shouldn't anyway. All right? You would not want to shoot a firearm that did not have its chamber proof tested before you put those magnum loads in there or whatever you got, right? You want it to be tested first. So we, like that, need to be prepared for action. I want you to turn to James. That's like, that's the previous book prior to 1 Peter. So if you got your Bible and you're in 1 Peter, just go to the left. You'll be there. Okay? In James, chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. See, the hard stuff tests our faith, and that testing then strengthens it. Because then you can look back and say, oh, I've been through that before. Okay? You can look back and I can look back, at least at my life. I can't look back at your life, so I can look back at mine and go, yeah, I was tested then. And I was about to give up 5 minutes for the miracle. But that testing prepared me for things in the future. I like where he says, the testing of your faith produces patience. I have a little saying, don't ask God for more patience. He's going to give you some testing to strengthen your faith and make your patience stronger. Right? Be thankful for the patience you already have. All right? That's just kind of my little personal joke. Thought I'd share it with you. Because through that testing, then we become, as he says, we can be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. He's not talking about money, right? He's not talking about property, wealth. Lacking nothing as far as the fruits of the Spirit are concerned. So we can rejoice in trials because they bring us a word called perseverance. A way to put that is stick-to-itiveness. If you persevere in something, you keep moving through it, don't you? If you quit, you're not persevering. I've had plenty of opportunities in my life to quit things. Like, this is too tough. I don't need this. And when I was about, 20 years old, I was ready to quit something that was really hard. I was like, I'll just go back to what I was doing before. I don't need this. I need to put up with all this garbage. It was a military thing, the military school stuff. And I was ready to hang it up and go back to what I was doing in the military before. And my dad gave me wise advice. He said, you are developing the pattern for your life. If you quit this, you will quit everything else difficult that comes along in your life. You need to stick it out. Okay, Dad. At least I listened that time, okay? Should have listened more often. I listened that time, and you know what? It all worked out for the best. And I made it through, okay? And I did what I had to do, and I made it through just fine out the other side. But man, it was tough. It was not easy. But I stuck to it. There's been times in my law enforcement career, I wanted to quit really early. Didn't know what else I was going to do, right? Sometimes you get into a career and if you don't have a backup plan, right? I didn't have a backup plan for a long time. And there were times like, I don't need this. I'm just going to quit and go sell cars. That's not a really great way to make a living unless you own the dealership, okay? I wouldn't do very good at a hardware store because I'm a terrible carpenter, plumber, electrician. Don't have me do it. It'll fall down or catch on fire or leak. So, just letting you know. But I stuck to it. There's been times as a pastor where my patience has worn thin. That's my problem. Because when my patience wears thin, what does that tell you about my relationship with God? It's starting to wear a little thin too. Okay? But I've been encouraged by others, some from within the church, some outside the church. Stick to it. Keep preaching the word, keep loving the people. That's Village Mission's motto, right? Has been for a long time. It works. It's always worked and it keeps working. So stick to it. That's what I have to do. Got to stick to it. See, we endure, and we endure hard things, and we endure hard things that come upon us as Christians at times because we love Jesus who loved us first. Let me ask you something. I'm just going to... Well, I'm going to put it this way. I have never actually physically, maybe in a dream, okay? I've never physically seen Jesus standing in front of me. I've seen pictures, right? You know, artistic renderings and carvings and things like that. But I've not had Jesus physically stand in front of me. I've never seen him. I don't really know what he looks like. Right? I think all the artist renderings that pretty much look alike, clear back to like the Michelangelo days, right? They painted him to look like a really tall Western European with long hair. Yeah, like a German,